If you are just tuning in, this is NBC Sheila Mac Show here on KCAA Radio, the station that leaves no listener behind. I'm your host, Sheila Mac, and I have a special free gift announcement for you. That's right.
Are you ready for a reboot? Welcome to the Sheila Mac Show, reality at its finest. History reminds us those hit hardest often become the change makers. This year, we've all hit crazy economic, social, and emotional rock bottoms. We all get knocked down. Something hits globally, locally, personally. It affects our health, finances, our relationships. We have to recreate a business or career. Each show, Sheila and her special guest will be sharing their reboot stories, guiding you with real solutions to upgrade and up-level emotionally, mentally, physically, spiritually, and financially. Here on NBC's KCAA Radio. If you're ready to pull yourself up by the bootstraps and bra straps, enjoy a listen. Here's Sheila.
Dear friends, I had to share this message because I love you all the most. I'm happy to announce that my new book, Bootstraps and Bra Straps, the formula to go from rock bottom and back into action in any situation, is now available. The heart of this book was written for you. If you're going through a tough situation this year, if you've hit a rock bottom, I want to let you know that number one, you are not alone. And next, that you can, in fact, reinvent and reboot your life on your terms. How do I know that? I know that because I've had to reinvent and reboot my life on many occasions. I can go as far back as being a little child with my parents divorcing when I was very young and then ending up going from home to home, and sometimes I ended up in very, very abusive homes. Later, I found myself at 10 and 11 years old, homeless on the streets, going from place to place and having to be very resourceful on my own. Then I found the magical foster care, and I went into this system, and I got to meet all these other girls that went through their own tough situations, and I got to hear their stories, and it was so interesting to me. I thought I was on this grand adventure, and when I was in this foster care system, one of the things that I did was there was this big mansion house that used to be the orphanage nearby, and these people bought it. So I went up to the door, maybe the first or second day I was there, and I knocked on the door and I introduced myself and I said, I want to be your personal assistant. And right away, they hired me. So I had this life where I got to see what it was like to be in the foster care system, to be in a group home, to not have family contact me at all, and then have these incredible people let me work with them and teach me all these beautiful things. I got to be their personal assistant until I emancipated. I learned how to do events and art and all these amazing, incredible things because I knocked on the door. So that's one of the secrets, is knock on the door and it will be answered. You've got to step up. So in all of that, there were just these times where I did something a little bit different. And I realized that there was this dance that you can go between these two different worlds, and that it's all about a decision. It's a decision on how you show up and what you decide to do with your life that's going to make all the difference. So with that, things got great in my life. I emancipated. I ended up getting married, getting into a relationship, having children. I wanted to give back, so I had 3 of my own children. I also fostered to adopted 3 more children. At 24, I was opening gift stores. I ended up having 5 stores. And with these stores, I had this entire program to help these kids get from foster care, get into a training program when they're emancipating, and learn all the different parts of running a store, because I always wanted to give back in all I was doing. And because of that, that's another secret. When you give, you receive. It's like this law that happens. When you give back, you receive many gifts and many blessings. And the birth of the concept of this book came to me after I had traveled the world and learned with the most incredible people on the planet. And then I got settled again after traveling for 7 years straight. And I bought this beautiful home in Ventura. And a month later, after I had designed everything, put all my furniture in there and made it just perfect, on December 3rd, 2017, I lost my home and everything in it. I lost my car. I lost my cat, all within a few days. Everything that I had worked so hard to achieve was gone. And I found myself moved into a little, it was a prefab home that I had made into a vacation rental. And it was fully booked because everybody had to have a place to stay. So I ended up staying in this little shed on the side of the house. It was less than 400 square feet. And oh my gosh, I got a little bit depressed for a few days, and I thought, wait a minute, what do I do? And I got on my rebounder. I did affirmations. I decided, and it was in that moment of that decision that my destiny was shaped and things changed. I quickly was invited to work in Beverly Hills at a new job. I had been working in real estate for years at this point also, and so I got invited to work there and stayed with friends there, and then got my own place. I was able to get a replacement car quickly, and all these things happened. And one day I went back to that little cabin house as I was getting ready to finally put it on the market and sell it. And I thought, oh my gosh, there's a formula that I've used all through my life. So I sat down and I wrote out the beginnings, the Boots formula, and the steps that I needed to take, no matter the situation, the steps that I had to take to get me back on track quickly. Within a month's time, I was already moved out and moving on and happy in my life, and people were still stuck. And I thought, well, that's kind of different, it's just, there's something different. So I wrote that out, and then I sat and I thought about, what was my inspiration? What was it that I had gone through all these crazy things in my life? What inspired me? And what came to me was the memory of being at my grandparents' home. And my grandmother was, she was very interesting, yet she was a businesswoman. She never lost her feminine, and she was incredible in her business. And she made friends with all these other ladies in her age group, and they would all get together and have tea or coffee and talk for hours. They would share their rich histories about what they've gone through. I mean, there was this one lady that had escaped from a concentration camp, and she lost her entire family as a young girl. There was another lady there that her husband passed away, and she had a famous restaurant in downtown LA, and she was running it by herself, even when that wasn't like a cool thing to do or acceptable. She didn't care. She knew, and she traveled the world, and all these stories that these ladies told me. I had another lady that her and her husband escaped a country with a new ruler, and they had to leave their home, their cars, all their worldly possessions, and come to the United States without even speaking the language and start over again. And, I was 4 or 5 years old, and I remember thinking, oh my gosh, I'm going to have my own adventures and my own stories, because life is like this. It doesn't matter where you're from. I was in Los Angeles, California. It's so diverse there. So I had these stories from everywhere, and these beautiful ladies that were my role models. I took their stories with me and I carried them with me, and they inspired me. If you are just tuning in, this is NBC's Sheila Mac Show here on KCAA Radio, the station that leaves no listener behind. I'm your host, Sheila Mac, and today I have a couple of announcements. First, I would like to hear from you. That's right. I would love to hear from you. to be honest. I want to know what your breakthrough is, what your reboot is. How are you reinventing and rebooting your life? What shows would you like to hear more of? What information do you need to help you get back on track this year? And to do that, the best way to connect with me is actually through my new YouTube channel, and that is Sheila Mac Show on YouTube. And there you can see past recordings, and you can also see other information and shares that I have. And I would love for you to share in the comments there what you're needing more of and what you're rebooting this year, and how we can help you get back on track. If you're just tuning in, this is NBC's Sheila Mac Show here on KCAA Radio, the station that leaves no listener behind. I'm your host, Sheila Mac, and today we are going to have a talk about abuse and how to get abuse-free if you are in an abusive situation. All right, take a listen. All right, and before we get started on our topic of abuse, breaking free from abuse, breaking the cycle of abuse, I would like to share that the copies of this show are now stored on my YouTube channel, and that is on Sheila Mac Show on YouTube. I'd love for you to subscribe and share. And also, I have a few programs available. I have started a Patreon for my reboot topics, and that is at Patreon, patreon.com/reboots, REEBOTS. That's patreon.com/reboots. And you can also learn more about private consulting at SheilaMac.com. Now let's get started. In my book, Bootstraps and Bra Straps, the formula to go from rock bottom back into action in any situation, you can also find an entire chapter dedicated to breaking free from abuse. 9. Breaking the cycle. Addiction. Maggie grew up loved by her relatives and friends. Shortly after coming into this world, she was adopted. Her birth mother had addiction problems and got pregnant very young. Close relatives arranged Maggie's adoption by two loving parents who couldn't have children of their own. Maggie grew up in a beautiful environment. She was well cared for, went to top schools, and had private tutoring when she needed it. She loved horseback riding, ice skating, and hours spent with her parents. They loved Maggie and gave her everything they possibly could. Then, toward the end of high school, Maggie's dad got sick and died. Maggie had received a full scholarship to college, but she deferred admission for a year so she could stay home and help her mom through the grieving process. She didn't feel like she could leave until her mom was settled and in a healthy place. Financially, they had to adjust. They sold the house Maggie had grown up in and moved to a smaller one across town. She finished high school, but one by one her friends left for college and Maggie stayed at home. In high school, Maggie hung out with friends and had a beer or smoked a little pot, or whatever kids do that we don't want them to do. As her friends went away to college and she grieved her father's death in her own way, she began hanging with a new crowd and experimenting with harder drugs. Maggie's mother was going through her grieving process, so she wasn't quite as present as she'd been in the past. She missed the signs that Maggie was slipping into addiction. If she had thought about it, she probably would have believed she knew and trusted her daughter. Experimenting with hard drugs wasn't a behavior she would suspect from the child she knew. While Maggie hung out with her friends, Maggie's mom went to grief counseling. By the time she noticed the changes in Maggie's behavior, the situation was severe. Maggie wasn't working. She wasn't doing anything. She stole money from her mom and friends. When her old high school friends came back to visit from college, they wondered what happened and who this new person was. It was very painful for those friends to see this young woman they loved so much go down such a difficult, terrible road. She lost a lot of friends who didn't want to hang out with somebody doing that to themselves. Maggie didn't get to go to college the next year.
She lost her scholarship. Now her mom had to go through a new grieving process, losing the version of the little girl she thought she knew. Filling a void. People aren't born smokers or alcoholics, but they may be at risk for addiction. Maggie's birth mother was an addict. It's possible that Maggie inherited an increased likelihood of addictive behavior. Beyond that risk, however, Maggie was also trying to fill a void. Many times, people try to kill the pain of grief or loss with drugs, alcohol, cigarettes, or eating disorders. People who exhibit addictive behaviors are filling something in their life that they don't feel empowered about, that they feel they don't have control over. So they go down that road as an escape route. They can't deal with it, so they go drink or smoke pot. Sometimes it's only a couple of drinks or smoking a little for a brief period of time. Other times it's a slippery slope to higher level, hardcore drugs that can lead to an overdose. Whether it's lighter substances, even cigarettes, or hardcore drugs, when the substance controls you instead of you controlling your use, that's a sign of addiction. The things people are addicted to vary from one person to the next, whether it's a drug, a food, alcohol, or an activity that's bad for you. People have sexual addictions, addictions to gambling or shopping. Unbalanced behavior without moderation is another sign of addiction. Whatever form it takes, addiction can lead straight to rock bottom. I don't believe addicts choose to be addicts. They want to escape or numb a painful situation and use the substance or activity to do so. What begins as perhaps an entertaining, one-off experiment triggers the feel-better part of their brain, and when things are bad again, they go do the behavior again to feel better, and it becomes a vicious, uncontrollable cycle. When a chemical is involved, it's not easy to control. If it were, addicts would be able to say, well, I'm done. I'm not going to do that anymore. If you can't control your behavior, it's an addiction. Whether you see that in yourself or in a loved one, you need support and a community. So you don't have to go through that alone. It's going to take a lot of willpower and other resources to get through. You may want to help the loved one who has an addiction with all your heart, but you're going to have to do more than just talk about it. What to do if you recognize addiction in yourself. If you're reading this book and going through an addiction yourself, struggling to pull away and wanting to live the life you envisioned, but your addiction continues to pull you back down, know that for your children, for yourself, for the life that you desire, you're going to have to put down that addiction. If you don't, we have an activity at the end of this chapter that shows how your addiction affects every single aspect of your life. If your addiction is controlling you and you're not in control of your life, you need to consider seeking medical treatment for an addiction. If you recognize addictive behavior in yourself, maybe this just solidifies it, or maybe it brings it to light for you. You thought things were going fine, and then you realize, oh, that's why my family isn't speaking to me. Or, that's why I'm having such a tough time at work and always getting in trouble. I recently met a 32-year-old waiter who works 2 jobs but is still struggling to pay his rent because he goes out drinking most nights of the week. All his friends drink, his family drinks, and that's the only way he knows how to socialize. Anything he does outside of work involves alcohol, and it's starting to mess up his life. He's tired all the time, he doesn't feel well most days, and he wants to find one well-paying job instead of working 2 lower-paying ones. As we talked, he finally admitted, I think I have a problem with my drinking. If you've had a similar realization, you may be wondering what you should do or what you can do. You have to address the real cause of what led you down that road, honor your experience, and face it. Then deal with whatever you have to do to get rid of some of it. That may require medical intervention, medication to get off the drug, or going through a rehab program because now your body is physically addicted to the substance. You may need to find a new peer group who are focused on the positive things you want to accomplish, like work, school, or personal development. You need to change your environment so that you set yourself up for success, removing the people, situations, or items that trigger your addiction. Then, you need to replace your addiction with a new, healthy behavior. What can you replace this coping mechanism with? Some people get a high when they run, and that allows them to process the things that are happening in their life. Or if running isn't where you're at right now, maybe you want to try yoga to help you get calm and centered. There has to be something new that you pick up instead of picking up that drug or alcohol or credit card or food to binge on. If you used to be addicted to burgers and fries, maybe you can get addicted to going out dancing or doing yoga or riding your bike. You can replace an addiction to drinking or a drug with writing in your journal, blasting music, or painting when things are difficult. Maybe you're going to join an adult sports team. We don't have to stop playing just because we're adults. I have a client who used to be a competitive swimmer. That was her healthy release and way to cope. Then she had children and got stuck working long hours in a job she didn't like. She was doing everything for everyone else and nothing for herself. So to cheer herself, she would eat little treats. One day when her kids were in high school, she realized just how out of shape she was. Thinking back, she also realizes that she's been miserable for years. She's not happy, so she numbed her misery with food. She struggled with that realization. She was angry. She asked herself, what the hell happened to me? After dealing with her immediate reaction, she decided to take a plunge and make one change for herself. One of the neighbors let her use their pool in exchange for teaching their children how to swim. Soon she started teaching other children how to swim as well. Eventually, she started her own swimming school. Now she's in great shape and she still teaches swimming. Her kids are grown and she taught her grandkids how to swim. And she's happy. She needed a way to replace that addiction with something positive. Your healthy replacement doesn't have to be expensive. It doesn't have to please another human being. It's just something that is your way of expressing yourself or having fun that isn't eating or doing something else to fill the void. Then it's a real happiness, not a drug-induced feeling from an activity that drags you down. It's a healthy habit that leads to taking back that control in your life, rather than letting your addiction determine where you end up. What to do if you recognize addiction in a loved one. As I said, addiction affects everyone and everything in your life. But what does it look like for the person on the other side of that addiction? You may experience a child, friend, or partner struggle with an addiction, but you can't just tell them, oh, just stop drinking. Get addicted to the beach. That's a great idea, but when it's not your own idea, it won't work. And then you'll have the added resentment of, who the hell are you to tell me what to do? Sometimes people say things they wouldn't say if they weren't in that addiction space. Their character and personality are almost lost. It's not them. They have something else that's ruling their common sense or right thinking. If they were in control, in their right mind, and not addicted to something, they would not want the addiction in their life, your life, or their children's lives. When somebody's ready to kick an addiction, they ask, what can I do? What are my options? They're ready to walk through that door instead of you having to push them. I know that you want to push them because you love them so much. You have the desire to push them, drag them, or do whatever you have to do, figuratively or literally, just to get them to that healthy place because you want the best for them. Sometimes that means stepping out of the picture, using tough love, or setting boundaries. You have to be set, solid, unwavering on your boundaries. You might have to say, I can't have this in the house. If you come home drunk, then you're going to have to go until you get treatment. If you say you're going to do something, you need to follow through with it. Then you make that person go somewhere else, a friend's house, a hotel, so they know their behavior is not acceptable. When that person isn't drunk, they wouldn't want that for you or your children, so this is the boundary. This has happened. Third strike, you're out. You can't control the other person's outcome. You can't make the decision for them. You can't push anymore, but you can decide, say, for this 6 months or year or even for a day, that you are not going to let it ruin how you show up for work or for yourself or with your kids. They will feel the difference. The strongest people I've known have had to do that, and their loved ones are most often the ones who actually get help and treatment because they're following through. They understand this is the way it's going to be and that you're not playing games. You're not joining that club. You're modeling the strength that somebody in an addiction doesn't have at the moment. You both need support. Someone suffering from an addiction needs a lot of help once they are ready to seek treatment, but their loved ones need support as well. You need resources, a peer group, and support from other people and the community to help somebody get through their addiction. You don't just need one support group. You're going to need a lot of support groups. You're going to need every single thing you can get, any person or group you can have on your side. All right, if you are just tuning in, we are going for a quick break and we will be back. If you are just tuning in, this is NBC Sheila Mac Show here on KCAA Radio, the station that leaves no listener behind. I'm your host, Sheila Mac, and today I'd like to give a special thanks to this episode's sponsor, Team Treehouse. That's right, teamtreehouse.com. So, if you're ready to launch your new career in coding, Treehouse has one of the best and most affordable online classrooms for you. At Treehouse, they have rethought the learning process and built a proven system to get you the skills and knowledge you need to achieve your goals. When you're done with a course, you haven't just watched a video. You learned, practiced, and absorbed a concept. Or choose to build a portfolio, create a network, and land your dream job with our boot camp style tech degree program. Land a development job this year. Whatever your goal will get you there. Start your 7-day free trial today. And you just need to go to www.teamtreehouse.com.
Have you lost your job? Have you lost a loved one? Are you exhausted caring for your parents, for your kids? Well, you can find immediate relief when you read Sheila Mac's new #1 bestseller, Bootstraps and Bra Straps. It contains the Boots formula to move from rock bottom back into action in any situation, especially right now. If life has knocked you down, pick yourself up with Bootstraps and Bra Straps. Get your copy at www.sheilamac.com today.
You need as many people as possible to help get somebody back on that beautiful track to a good life. I've included some resources for support on my website. That link is at the end of this chapter. Having a group and some support lets you know that you're not alone. You didn't cause this. It can happen to anyone from any group. Addiction does not discriminate. You can give someone the best possible life on this planet, and they could still have an addiction. You can give and receive help, but whether or not the other person takes it is out of your control. Sometimes the only thing you can do is send somebody love. If they're hurting you or stealing from you because of this addiction, the only way to be safe may be to keep them at arm's length and let another group or resource step in and help you through that. That's okay, because that is probably the safest and healthiest thing for both of you. It's tough love. It's sending compassionate, loving energy. It's living your life and doing your routine and setting those boundaries so you're not dragged into it. It's getting your own help through different connections and groups that are designed for people that have people with addictions in their life. That connection to other people helps a lot. Somebody in an addiction needs to hear it from different people. They need to look in the mirror, but they need people to guide them to that mirror. The people closest to them are usually not the people who are actually going to get through to them. They need a different voice or perspective. At the same time, it's easy to have a loved one pull you into that drama. If you get caught in their drama, it's like trying to rescue someone who is drowning. More often than not, they're going to pull you down with them. You love them, but you are at risk of losing your own life and losing yourself. Codependence. If you're mentally getting dragged down, you're already drowning with them. It's very easy to go down the codependent tunnel or give support in a way that actually adds to the other person's addiction. Codependence can happen when someone ends up covering for the addiction. They cover it up, compensate, don't take care of themselves, don't do their own self-care. Their whole life is run by the other person, but it's really the addiction that's running both of their lives. When you enable somebody in their addiction, it just prolongs the pain. You can become addicted to trying to help this person, and you lose your other healthy relationships. You lose your life. You're spending so much money and time enabling the addict that you're not taking care of yourself. That can easily happen. People get so caught up in thinking they have to help this person that they have to do whatever they can. They forget to help themselves. Give yourself permission to say, this is what I need to do to let that relationship be healthy again. Accept that it may not happen right away. It may not happen at all. But don't take on the burden of a responsibility that isn't yours. Live your life and model what a healthy life looks like. Don't let this situation disrupt all the good that you're doing. You're the healthy, grounded one who can guide them out, even when guiding them out means stepping away and giving tough love. You need to be really centered and have control of your life, so you don't go down with them. In the activities section of this chapter, there are some questions to determine whether you may be enabling a loved one's addiction. You will also find suggestions on how to stay the course of supporting your loved one through an addiction without losing your own wellness in the process. You and the other family members not dealing with addiction are the healthier ones in this case, so setting solid boundaries will model wellness to your loved one. It is important to have all parents and other family members involved and aligned on how to set and enforce loving boundaries that will protect everyone's safety and help the loved one recover. Show them their options and discuss the resources for support. Show them their light and focus on their strengths. Addictions feed on attention. When you feed an addiction by giving it attention, you fuel it on an energetic realm. As Tony Robbins says, energy goes where attention flows. It's important to not fuel that fire. Put your energy on the things that you can control and change in your life. What can you do as a parent or partner in a relationship? What are the things you can control? Because you can't control another human being. You can control how you give attention when the person with the addiction has a success, when they're really making the effort, When they are going to get help or going to a treatment center, that's when you give the attention. You can focus on that and on their strengths and remind them of who they really are, who they showed up as in your life. You're supporting every little teeny tiny good effort. The message is, I love you because I love you. I'm not going to support you when you're doing this. And because I also love and honor myself, I know you wouldn't want this for me, and I don't want that for you. I don't want to see you hurt yourself. I'm not going to help you hurt yourself. I will support your efforts to love yourself. If you're not the one with the addiction, you have the choice of how to show up. You're teaching people how to show up for you by how you show up for them and for yourself. What if the addiction isn't to drugs or alcohol? We focused a lot on addictions to drugs or alcohol, but what if it's something different? What if it's an addiction to gambling, to cigarettes, or an eating disorder? The concept is going to be the same, but the treatment is different. There are certain levels of a relationship where you might step in. Maybe you can keep your loved one active and give them fun things to do that take them out of the place they use addiction to escape. You're doing something to get them out of that mental state or place of feeling down that brings them to that addiction sometimes. What can you change in the addictive pattern? You're not saying, hey, let's stop shopping. Instead, it might be, hey, let's take a road trip. Let's go to the gym. Let's go dancing. Then you're taking them away from it and replacing it with something as a couple, as a parent, or as a friend. You're redirecting the focus without having the discussion about shopping. Then they're having fun and they didn't have to face that issue for a while. Compliment them on things that are real. Not a fake compliment, but a real heartfelt compliment on the positive things. Positive reinforcement helps them keep wanting to do whatever earned that compliment. Nobody wants to be criticized. Constructive criticism, especially when someone's in a place of going into an addiction as a coping mechanism for everything else that's going on in their life, is not really helpful. They don't need you to throw a rock at them right now. They're already hurting. You see that they're hurting. Give them a hand and help them up. Get them out of that mental state. Go do something else. Let them see that it's coming from love, so they feel only love. If you have a relationship that allows for an open conversation about the addiction, you can say, hey, if you start going down that road again, what can I do to help you? Maybe you can come up with a code word, or they can tell you something to do or not do. Then you know how to support them through the rough spots without being overbearing. Then you can say, remember that we had that talk? I see you're going down there, and you said to do these things, so I'm doing them. If you want me to stop, I will, but I'm going to support you this way. That takes a lot of the judgment out. You don't think you're better than them because you don't have that addiction, and you're not telling them not to do it because you know better. It's just, I'm here and I'm going to support you as best I can. That helps you and your loved one reach the desired outcome a lot faster. Applying the Boots formula to addiction. I once worked with a very successful businessman named Ben, a friend of a friend, who hid his extreme alcoholism for years. Eventually, however, it caught up with him. He got into a car accident, totaled his car, got charged with a DUI, and lost his license. After that, he didn't hide his drinking as much, and during a days-long binge, he fell into a pool and almost drowned. His friend came to me afraid that Ben was going to die. Ben's addiction was threatening his life. Being. Ben first had to acknowledge who he was being, an alcoholic. He needed a reboot instead of another rehab because he wanted to redefine his identity and become functional again. If he didn't want to change, nobody could make him. He had to be willing to take these steps. So who are you being if you are the one with an addiction? Or who are you going to be when you're showing up for this person suffering from an addiction? You first have to admit that there's a problem before you can begin walking through it. When you start to show up again, the people around you see a different person showing up, and they see the effort. It brings that positive healing to everybody around you. And as you inspire them, they can re-inspire you as you see people in your life choosing to make a change or pick up healthier habits. That's a healthy cycle that reinforces the change you made. Orientation. Ben had to acknowledge that his addiction owned him. He had to confront how many times he put himself or others in danger. He had to look at how much money his drinking had cost and what the cost was in health, quality of life, safety, and how other people perceived him. Ben had to own up to that before he could switch roles. He also had to acknowledge the good parts of himself, his intelligence and good business sense when he was sober, and all the people his company helped. Then he had to say, this is what I would like for my business, my family, and myself. Where are you in your life, and how can you take ownership of your situation? When you make a mistake or something doesn't go right or you get a surprise, you can be honest about that too. People really appreciate that and can support you through falling off that horse or wagon, which will happen. In life, there are going to be challenges, and how you show up through them is huge. People are going to support you when you're willing to be open and honest. When you don't hide anything, it's easier to get the help you need quickly to get back on track easily. Order of operations. Once Ben knew what his life currently looked like and how he wanted it to change, he figured out the steps to get from point A to point B. The first step was to clean up his environment. He invited his friends and family to his dumping party, and we dumped many dollars worth of very expensive booze down the drain. He was honest with people about where he wanted to go, and he asked them for their support. They agreed not to cover for him, to help him set boundaries, and to model healthy behavior. What are the steps you need to take to replace your addiction with a healthier alternative? What are the steps you need to put in place to set boundaries and model healthy behavior for a friend or loved one with an addiction? Thinking. Ben had to change his thinking, too. He had to be honest and think differently about his life while giving himself credit for his successes. When he had a setback, he asked, how do I change that? What do I need to do differently next time? Who do I need to talk to get support on this? So how can you change your mindset? How can you think differently about yourself and what you want your life to look like? If you can see the end of the addiction, then you can live into it. Stepping up. Ben stepped up into a big change, and that was the moment he saved his own life. We all have challenges every day. When you step up and face these challenges, you show yourself and everyone around you that you are in control of your life. So step into taking care of yourself, loving yourself, and empowering yourself to be the best you can be. From addiction rock bottom to moment of empowerment. Maggie hit a literal rock bottom. People were concerned she would end up homeless and lost, unsure if she would live or die. Her friends and family did an intervention and got her into rehab, which cost a lot of money but got her back on her feet. It took a couple of years and a few backslides. She would get better and then fall off the wagon and have to go through the whole process again. but each successive time she didn't fall as deep and it didn't last as long. Maggie finally went to university, graduated, and got a good job. She never returned to that low point in her life. Reboot activity. Free yourself from addictions. We all either face or know someone who has faced addiction. The following is some additional information that may help you or loved ones take back your power and rebuild your life. Excessive alcohol use can increase a person's risk of developing serious health problems, in addition to those issues associated with intoxication behaviors and alcohol withdrawal symptoms. Tobacco use and smoking do damage to nearly every organ in the human body, often leading to lung cancer, respiratory disorders, heart disease, stroke, and other illnesses. Marijuana has not only immediate effects like distorted perception, difficulty problem solving, and loss of motor coordination, but also effects with long-term use such as respiratory infection, impaired memory, and exposure to cancer-causing compounds. Opioids, including prescription drugs such as hydrocodone, oxycodone, morphine, and codeine, reduce the perception of pain, but can also produce drowsiness, mental confusion, euphoria, nausea, constipation, and depending upon the amount of drug taken, can depress breathing. Opioid misuse represents a unique challenge. According to the Center for Disease Control and Prevention, an average of 130 Americans die every day from an opioid overdose. As people use opioids repeatedly, their tolerance increases and they may not be able to maintain the source for the drugs. This can cause them to turn to illegal sources for these drugs and even switch from prescription drugs to cheaper and more risky substances like heroin. These substances vary in purity and strength, which increases the risk of serious medical complications or overdose. It's not worth the risk, ever. There are many medically supervised programs to help a person to reduce and then get off these drugs completely. While many can benefit from using these medications to manage pain, prescription drugs are frequently misused. If you ever have to take prescription medications for pain, make sure you take the lowest dose possible. Alternative pain management options can be used along with regular medication. Some people have had great success using arnica cream and homeopathic pills to reduce pain and swelling. This always must be discussed with your doctor first to ensure it will not have a side effect with any prescriptions or other treatment methods you're using. Acupuncture, chiropractic, earthling mats for sleeping, and physical therapy may be great additions to a healing program and are a good way to help with pain management control. Quiz to see if you or a loved one may have a drug or alcohol addiction. You or your loved one uses references to alcohol or drugs in many conversations, like, "I can see us sitting by the pool, relaxing, and having a drink or smoking some pot." You or a loved one keeps taking a drug after it's no longer needed for a health problem. You or your loved one often will even look in other people's medicine cabinets for drugs to take. You or your loved one has all but lost interest in things that once brought a good amount of happiness to life. You or a loved one needs more and more of a substance to get the same effects. You or a loved one hides the drug use from others. Getting caught causes an outburst. You or your loved one takes prescribed meds with alcohol or other drugs. You or your loved one often feels strange when the drug wears off. You may be shaky, depressed, sick to your stomach, sweat, or have migraines. You or your loved one goes to more than one doctor to get prescriptions to treat the same drug addiction. You or your loved one has a new set of friends with whom doing drugs is the routine. You or your loved one just can't stop using the drug, even if you want to. You are still using it even though it's making bad things happen in your life, like trouble with friends, family, work, or the law. Other people start to complain to you about how you or your loved one has changed and not for the positive. You sleep too much or too little compared with how you used to, or you eat a lot more or less than before. You or your loved one spends a lot of time thinking about the drug, how to get more, when you'll take it, how good you feel, or how bad you feel afterward. You or your loved one is having trouble getting along with coworkers, teachers, friends, or family members. You or your loved one has lost track of boundaries and limits in relationships as well as in how much of a drug to ingest. It is never enough, and it's often way too much. You or your loved one drives or does other dangerous activities while intoxicated. You or a loved one borrows or steals money to pay for drugs. You or your loved one looks different. Things to watch for are bloodshot eyes, bad breath, shakes, tremors, frequent bloody noses, or rapid weight gain or weight loss. You or your loved one has trouble doing normal daily things like cooking or working and often either oversleeps or has severe insomnia. When giving an addiction the boot, get everyone in the family on board. Get professional help for yourself and your loved one. Get community support for yourself and your loved one. Prepare yourself for the fact that there will be ups, downs, and sideways situations before recovery is completed. Be patient with yourself and your loved ones. Take care of yourself and the other people in your family. Believe your loved one's actions rather than their words. At first, when a family or group of friends come together to help a loved one give addiction the boot, the loved one may show anger or be in denial. With patience and as much support as you can gather, your loved one will one day thank you for sticking with them through this time. Bonus reboot. Are you enabling an addiction? Are you enabling your spouse, family member, friend, or loved one? Enabling contributes to the problem. Enabling a loved one to continue an unhealthy and dangerous habit such as drug or alcohol abuse is a huge contribution to your loved one staying stuck in an abusive pattern. If you suspect that a loved one has an addiction problem, take the quiz below. If you notice you and your loved one's extended family and friends are following these enabling patterns, it is time to work together to make a change. Have you ever called in sick to school or work for your loved one, even though you knew they could have made it? Have you set consequences for your loved one's problem behaviors but failed to follow through on them? Do you blame yourself for things that your loved one trapped in addiction is doing? Do you let your addictive loved one get away with just about anything, no matter what you do? Do you or others in your household say things like, "It's our fault for not being here more"? Have you or your family and friends paid legal fees or other charges as a result of your loved one's actions while under the influence? Do you or your family and friends ever lie to the others in your community to cover up your loved one's drunk or drugged behavior? For further resources for help on an addiction or life reboot, I have a resource section in this book, and the most current updates can be found on my website. My goal is to make sure that as you heal on your terms, you can connect to as many resources as possible. It is imperative that you take massive action when dealing with the throes of an addiction. The more resources a person or family has, the higher the chance of a full recovery. My gift to you. Dear readers, protect yourself and your loved one from the controlling, manipulative difficulties of abuse. Learn how to defend against backsliding and help to reboot your addiction from one that controls you or a loved one to a healthy habit that blesses all. Get your 2-week email-based addiction defense course at www.sheilamac.com/defense. Thank you for tuning in to the Sheila Mac Show, Reality at its Finest, where we share real situations with real solutions to help you rebuild, reinvent, and reboot your life on your terms. I'm your host, Sheila Mac. I'm giving you some homework. Grab a copy of my bestseller, Bootstraps and Bra Straps, to learn the formula to go from rock bottom and back into action in any situation. If you have a burning question for the show, send it in to www.dearsheila.com. Tune in again Mondays at 1 p.m. Pacific Time and Wednesdays at 7 p.m. Pacific Time, right here on KCAA, the station that leaves no listener behind.
Have you lost your job? Have you lost a loved one? Are you exhausted caring for your parents, for your kids? Well, you can find immediate relief when you read Sheila Mac's new #1 bestseller, Bootstraps and Bra Straps. It contains the Boots formula to move from rock bottom back into action in any situation, especially right now. If life has knocked you down, pick yourself up with Bootstraps and Bra Straps. Get your copy at www.sheilamac.com today.
All right, this is the end of the show for today, and I would like to hear from you. That's right, you. So tune in to my YouTube channel, SheilaMac.com. I'd love to hear your comments and questions, or let me know if you'd like to be a special guest on the show. Also, you may go to SheilaMac.com for more free resources as well as private consulting options, or join my Patreon. I have some reboots that are just forming now. That's patreon.com/reboots. All right, see you next time.